Earlier this week, James Earl Jones passed away at the age of 93, leaving behind a truly legendary acting career. And while his career and iconic roles will be celebrated for generations to come, one part of his career you may not know is that he was actually the first ever guest star on Sesame Street. Hello everybody, and welcome back to Uptown Funk. I'm your host Ty, and today I'd like to honor the legacy of Mr. James Earl Jones by talking about an obscure piece of Sesame Street trivia all about him. Now, I was working on a separate video that was supposed to come out this week, but I knew as soon as I had heard of his passing that I had to talk about his involvement with Sesame Street. He's done several different things with Sesame Street over the years, but today I just want to highlight the first project he ever did for Sesame Street, where he became their first ever guest star. Before it aired in November of 1969, Sesame Street had 5 different test pilots to help test the water and figure out how the show would run. Several guest stars were actually there for the Sesame Street pilots. In addition to James Earl Jones, Carol Burnett was also there, a few different singers, and animated segments featuring some DC superheroes were included as part of the pilots as well. But the segments with James Earl Jones would be the first ever guest star segments recorded, and their contents would be simple. Jones would simply stand in front of the camera and recite the alphabet.
E, F, G.
Another segment, meanwhile, had him simply count from 1 to 10.
5, 6, 7.
Sure, it's simple. It's just Jones saying the alphabet. But hey, if you're gonna have anybody say the alphabet, may as well get one of the coolest voices of all time to do it, right? Well, this definitely seems like a bit of an odd guest star appearance, especially because we're all used to much larger, more significant guest star roles in the show nowadays. This was all done for a reason. Remember, this was part of the test pilot, where they were testing the waters for Sesame Street. And James Earl Jones' appearance actually contributed to studies on how to present the show. Note how the letters appear on screen before Jones says them. This was done completely intentionally. The idea is that a child could see this segment for the first time and say the alphabet alongside Jones, but on repeat viewings, they'll be able to identify the letters and say them before he does. This, which would go on to be dubbed the James Earl Jones effect, actually provided valuable evidence that Sesame Street could be used as an engaging tool, that kids could engage and interact with the show instead of just passively watching it. When Sesame Street was picked up to air, these segments with James Earl Jones would air in the show as early as episode 2. And while technically a segment featuring Carol Burnett would air in the first ever Sesame Street episode, Sesame Street officially acknowledges James Earl Jones as its first guest star since he filmed the segment before Carol Burnett did. He was the first celebrity to be there on Sesame Street. Following this, James Earl Jones would make several other appearances on Sesame Street, including a 1978 episode where he plays a big-shot actor that visits the town. Notably, this episode would air only a year after Star Wars came out, where he provided arguably his most iconic role ever, the voice of Darth Vader. He would also host a 10-year anniversary special for Sesame Street the following year in 1979. While reflecting on the series for its 35th anniversary, Jones had this to say about his appearance.
I was sitting in Matt Robinson's office when they were first putting the show together, and he had asked me to come and do something on it, and I said, I will, but I got to warn you, the Cookie Monster and the Muppet characters will not work because they'll terrify children. What did I know?
As funny as this is to hear, it really goes to show you just how much of a gamble Sesame Street was. This little show that picked up James Earl Jones to do a guest spot in one of its pilots has gone on to be one of the most significant television series ever created and is still running strong 50 plus years later, making Jones the first of hundreds of iconic guest stars to visit Sesame Street. And there you have it, everybody. The story of how James Earl Jones was the first ever Sesame Street guest star. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Bye now.
10.